I was raised with an Old Testament grandmother. My way and my deepest standing is biblical. But I've read the Quran from cover to cover.
Yeah.
During Ramadan 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I read the Bhagavad Gita from cover to cover. I read the teachings of the Buddha. So, you know, if I had to say what my religion is, I would take the Muhammad Ali quote, and my religion is love.
Anytime that somebody asks me about omnism, I always use this example of, like, if you go into a candy shop, you see all the different types of candy in the world. There's not one candy that is better than the other. You know, there's just not one candy that's better than the other. Everybody has their own favorite flavor. Everybody has something that just really clicks with them. But you would be ignorant, you would be considered a fool if you was to criticize somebody for liking Kit Kats. We're going to be reviewing a video from Mr. Will Smith. He did an interview with Lecrae, and people have been telling me in my DMs to do a reaction video to this. He basically gave a lot of insight upon the basis of his outlook of spirituality and religion, and basically we're getting a deep scope on the conscience of Will in terms of how he sees God and how he sees spirituality. And I believe I picked the right spot to talk about this. We won't be able to go through the whole interview, but I do want to really, I guess, like, dissect this in terms of the pinpoints and the things that he talks about in this video here. So we're going to get right into it. As y'all know, I am omniist. You know, you clicked on this channel, you know, I'm the omniist Roan. If you don't know what omnism is, it's basically, I define truth as being whole and as being one, but it is expressed in many different ways. So there are many different expressions to truth. There are many different faces to truth. So I can learn from Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, or Taoism. I can learn from Christianity, Islam, you know, everybody I can learn from and contribute the things that I feel are best for my life, you know. Basically eating the fish and spitting out the bones. So I don't know if that's what Will's standpoint on life is. He does seem to be a very open-minded person when it comes to spirituality. He doesn't really pinpoint on whether he's a Christian or not, unless I'm mistaken. But we're going to get into the video. Let's see what Mr. Will has to say. I got to get my headphones, don't I?
And I'm going to go there because you brought that up.
Yep.
There are, I mean, we live in an era now where people are, at least in person, trying to be very tolerant of one another.
Yeah.
Online is a different story.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Online is a different story.
Yeah.
You have, your journey has been interesting, right? From childhood to today.
Yeah.
And there are spiritual undertones in there.
Yeah.
You know, you were raised in the church,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you've been out in different areas of the world where you've seen, like, whoa, I never had this. Oh, I'm enlightened to this culture and these particular things. You weren't afraid of intolerance by referencing your church roots.
Right.
Because some people would say, whoa, man, I don't want that. Why was there no fear there?
You know, so my personal belief is, you know, I was raised, you know, with an Old Testament grandmother. Right. You know, so Gigi. Yeah. You know, so my way and my deepest understanding is biblical. You know, but I've read the Quran from cover to cover. Yeah. During Ramadan 2 years ago. Yeah. You know, I read the Bhagavad Gita from cover to cover. I read the teachings of the Buddha. So, you know, if I had to say what my religion is, I would take the Muhammad Ali quote, and my religion is love. Right? I believe in the oneness and the possibility of harmony between people who are all reaching for the one truth.
Yeah.
There's a line in the same record we were just talking about. It says, we're just a room full of sinners reaching for the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
And I just love that line, because everybody wants to hold on to some kind of comparative superiority.
For sure.
And, what has been beautiful for me in the past couple of years is the loss of my illusion of moral superiority.
Like you were better.
Well, I'm pretty sure he might go a little deep into that. But to pinpoint back on when he was talking about his religion is love, I do believe that is a very beautiful point. And the reason for that is that's basically what Jesus was talking about. Jesus said to his disciples, like, they shall know that you are my disciples in the way that you love one another. The Bible pinpoints that you could be the greatest among all the believers. You can heal the sick. You can prophesy. You can speak in tongues. You could do it all. But if you don't have love, you're just making noise. If you don't have love, you're just all smoke and mirrors. It talks about in the Bible that if you don't have love, you don't have God. You're not of the Spirit. How can you love God who you haven't seen and hate your brother who you see every day? That is in the Bible. The golden rule that is throughout many different perceptions around spirituality is love those and do good unto those who, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, basically. And that is something that, was talked about within the ministry of Jesus when you read through the gospel myths. So very crucial, very, very critical for Will to bring that up. I do believe in divine consciousness. I believe that we're all interconnected in divine consciousness, in this divine order, in this supreme order that can't be defined. It can't be labeled. It can't be suppressed in a book or in a path or in a system or in a name. It can't be well defined by man. It's a loss for words of how to define the unknown, the hidden one, the unnameable. And it's a beautiful framework to have. And even on a farther scope, you would think that with Christians, you could get through a lot farther with a universal perception, right? That doesn't mean that you have to accept everything that people do. You don't have to accept the lifestyles of everybody, but just to have that relation with everybody and saying that everybody is one to another, an expression of God. And because everybody is an expression of God, even if we don't see God the same, if we don't call upon God in the same manner and in the same names, that we are all interconnected into the divine order of life itself. So whether you're a Hindu or whether you're Buddhist or whether you're a Taoist, whether you study Confucianism, whether you study Socrates or Aristotle, whether you're an atheist or an agnostic, whether you are whatever you might be, whatever you might call yourself. You could practice hoodoo, voodoo, Santeria, Kwambanda. It doesn't matter what you subscribe to. Everybody is practicing the same truth. Everybody is connecting to the same truth. Anytime that somebody asks me about omnism, I always use this example of, like, if you go into a candy shop, you see all the different types of candy in the world. There's not one candy that is better than the other. There's just not one candy that's better than the other. Everybody has their own favorite flavor. Everybody has something that just really clicks with them. But you would be ignorant. You would be considered a fool if you was to criticize somebody for liking Kit Kats when you like, Kisses. You would be ignorant to judge somebody for liking Snickers, and you like something completely different. You like Jolly Ranchers or I'm not really a candy person, so I'm just whatever's coming off the dome right now. But, you know, you would be considered foolish to be in that range and judging somebody just for their taste in sweets. You could go to a particular store or a restaurant and you have all these different flavors of ice cream, or all these different flavors of drinks. You would be looked at as a fool. People will look at you crazy if you begin judging people for liking Sprite, or judging people for liking a high C or sweet tea or unsweet tea. The same thing is in reference to religion. The same thing is in reference to how you connect with God. You can be on a dance floor and everybody is dancing to the same tune, to the same rhythm, but everybody is dancing differently. Everybody is dancing at a different beat, at a different tone, but everybody is connected. Everybody is in unison. But you want to start a Cupid shuffle. You want to start a two-step slide, or whatever the case is, and judging people for not joining you in the two-step slide. And you should, everybody's just doing their own thing. That is how I see consciousness. That is how I see the world. That is how I see truth in itself. Your religion might tell you that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. But Jesus was even telling you that the I am is the way, the truth, and the life. The principle of it is the way, the truth, and the life. The internal that is within you, the eternal soul, the eternal force that is within you, the eternal I am that is within this world in itself, is the way, the truth, and the life. That is the kingdom of God. That is the presence and the consciousness of God. Of course, a lot of people are not going to subscribe to that because a lot of people have been deemed to the exoteric knowledge instead of the esoteric. A lot of people don't understand the true mysteries and the mysticism of their own religions. But I digress. Let us continue.
Better than everyone else.
Being humbled into the place that I'm not better than nobody.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like, it's so beautiful. You know, it's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal and beautiful.
Okay.
Right. You know.
That's intriguing.
Yeah.
That's actually very intriguing. 'Cause if you got ears to hear, you know what's being said. And what I hear you saying is that up until a while back, you probably thought you were made out of Teflon.
Yeah, I certainly always joke with my family, and they don't think it's funny. I was like, I'm King David. I'm God's man. God likes me, y'all. Just admit it. You know, no, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You've been humanized in a lot of ways.
And settled down into the connective, the only place you can really meet somebody and have authentic compassion is when you recognize the sameness.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Wow. That is so profound. And that's why I love these type of sit downs with Will. And it just goes like what he was talking about, this moral superiority that he once had, and then experiencing other people and connecting with other people really gets you to a state of mind of understanding that we're all one and the same. We're all on the same journey. We're all trying to get to that point of enlightenment and awareness. And I watched Midnight Gospel, right? Randomly watching Midnight Gospel with one of my very good friends. And in one of the episodes, this man with a fishbowl talks about how enlightenment isn't even really all that what is deemed to be. That to just be enlightened is just really just being awareness of your very essence and being. You know, and I'm not going to get too much into what he was saying because it really goes, it goes deep. I highly recommend that y'all watch Midnight Gospel all the way through. But he just talks about basically how enlightenment is just you just having complete awareness of your very being, of your very life in itself, you know, and that true reaching of enlightenment is really just living out your true essence, your true life, and your true purpose. You know, I had to go back and watch that so I can actually really pinpoint even more on the stuff that was being said in that episode. But yeah, like talking to other people, learning different religions, learning different spiritualities. One day I will have the privilege to, you know, go around the world and really actually have these conversations that I've been studying in mere books about spirituality and these different connections and interpretations, or, you know, versions of truth, you know, these different expressions of truth that I've been studying for years. Going to Cambodia or going to different places in Asia and different places in Africa and asking people how did they interpret truth and how they see God. That is something that I want to do. You know, instead of reading it from a book and telling you that I'm omniscient and things like that, I actually want to have these type of sit downs with people in different parts of the world to see how they see God, to go to their temples, to go to their places of worship and stuff like that. And that's going to come. It may not be here now, but you'll see it. You'll see it. I'll be all nice and more dashing than I am now. more nice and dashing, probably more hair than I have now, and going around the world and doing that type of stuff, really putting pen to paper, you know. But in the church, a lot of people have that pride or that arrogance to them of thinking that they are God's favorite. And while they proclaim to be God's favorite, their life tells a whole different story. Everybody's life can't be like Will Smith. But granted, with Will Smith's success, you know, he had that, you know, boastful head of like, yeah, I'm like King David. Like, I'm after God's own heart. Like, I'm God's favorite. Like, you don't see how my life is going right now and things like that. So for him to get to that place in his life to where he starts to learn from different people, he starts to really, like how he used the word humanize, you know, he started to really, you know, get off the high horse and come to a level of understanding that, oh, wow, there's more to life than just what I know. You know, all my life I thought it was just the Bible. All my life I thought it was just the word and abiding by the word and being doers of the word. And I didn't understand about the Atman and the Brahman. I didn't understand about the Dio. I didn't understand about Ogun and Oshun or the Netters or the Hidden One or just different aspects of nature in itself. And all this can be seen scientifically as well for those who are, you know, little science heads. Everything that is spiritually understood can be scientifically explained as well. So we'll just leave it at that. But I do love that. I love that he actually brings that out and expresses that, because a lot of people don't have the heart to do that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people do not have the heart to truly understand life in itself and the different dynamics of truth that in ways that it can be expressed. Let's continue.
I heard a quote. I'm not exactly sure who said it, but I'll claim it as my own.
Yeah,
but
that's the 3 repeat rule.
3 repeat.
You 3 repeat. When you repeat something one time, you say, you know, somebody said.
Yep.
And you know, the second time you say, I don't remember who said it, and then the third time you repeat, like I always say.
Like I always say. Like I've said twice before. Like I've said a couple times. But is that our highest call is to be human.
Yes.
Not less than human and not superhuman.
Right.
But to be human and to humanize one another.
To be it all, to recognize that you're it all. That, you know, it's only by the grace of God that you don't find yourself on one side or the other in a war zone. Because who knows what you would do if people that you loved were being threatened. And it's only by the grace of God that you don't have to make that choice. Right? And that's what I recognized, you know, is I am in a blessed scenario But if I were in another scenario, is my spiritual commitment strong enough to not do things that I talk about other people for doing?
That's good.
What would I do if I was there?
Yeah.
If Willow was on one side of a line and somebody was tripping on the other side, what would I do?
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about grace, right? Is that you have to have a sense of, you've got to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
You got to be able to look at somebody else and say, you know what? I'm no better than them, and I can't look down on them.
Right.
And how would I respond? How would I react if I were in said person's shoes?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
You might say, I wouldn't do what that fool doing. I don't care. I definitely wouldn't be doing that. But I'd be making my own mistakes. But I wouldn't be doing that.
Right.
And we're going to get back to that in a second, but I also want to pinpoint how a lot of Christians don't self-reflect. A lot of Christians don't empathize with people when they talk about their experiences. A lot of people, whenever people talk about their religious trauma or their deconstruction stories, there's a lot of gaslighting. There's a lot of major gaslighting with the church and with Christianity that I've often seen, because they don't like to admit their flaws. They don't like to admit where they have fallen short in the church or in their systems, or when it comes to their interpretations of the Bible or their many different religious doctrines. And so a lot of Christians will just bypass your hurt. They will bypass your trauma. And even to a certain point where they talk about church hurt. There's a phrase now with Christians where people are church hurt. I had people try to claim that I was church hurt. Never, ever have I ever proclaimed to be church hurt. Ever. Not one time. I've mentioned the many dysfunctions in the church, but I've never personally been hurt by the church. I've never been embarrassed by the church. I went to a very good church. A lot of good people still go through that church. The pastor, I am still in, for now, still in good relations with the pastor. I look up to him as a father figure because he was the first black man that I've ever seen that stood up and had a voice and was unapologetic and unashamed to speak his mind. And I developed to learning that I can stand up and have a voice as well. So was never church hurt. I just started to see the lies and then they just started to unravel before me. And I was never church hurt, but there are a lot of people who have had very bad negative church experiences, and you can't just bypass that and be like, oh, they're just church hurt. They should have went to a better church, or they should have they should have went to another community. They should have fellowship with some other Christians, or those weren't true Christians. If that is the case, why did Jesus, or why did the Holy Spirit, or why did God allow them to go through that? Why didn't the Holy Spirit lead them and guide them to a different church? Why didn't Jesus talk to them or speak to them or move them to go to a different church? You have to think to a certain point that once people start feeding you the same BS over and over and over again, you're just going to stop going. You're going to stop going for the old okie doke. It's like Charlie Brown and Lucy, and she holding the football. And I promise, Charlie Brown, I'm going to keep the football here. And Charlie Brown always falls for it. It never fails. So you got to get to that point of, I'm just not going to fall for that stuff no more. And there's a lot of similarities with churches in terms of what they teach. So you can proclaim that one church was bad and this other church was bad, or a person's experience isn't valid. But a lot of those experiences that people have had in the church, a lot of other people can relate to as well. A lot of people. And even more so, there's a lot more religious people who can relate to those things, and it just bypass it because they're so desensitized to their own trauma that they just think that's just the way things are. I can't tell you how many people have condoned, advocated for the Marvin Sapp situation. And I told myself I wasn't going to talk about it, but people have told me in my DMs that I should react to it. If you want me to, let me know in the comments below. I might just do it anyway, even if you tell me to or not. But there are a lot of things that dysfunctionally happen in the church. A lot of things that even if it's normalized in the church, it shouldn't be normalized. It shouldn't be seen as right. It shouldn't be credible or valid. You know, so I've done enough of that rambling. Let's continue.
My humanity would look different, but it would be human nonetheless.
It would be human nonetheless.
As soon as you listen to Based on a True Story, right? Because I had the privilege of listening to the project. As soon as you listen to it, you instantly go in to your humanity.
Yeah.
Instantly,
yeah.
And it was
3 seconds into the album.
So I'm not gonna lie to you. I was shocked that you were willing to go there. Because it's like the whole world is like, has stuff to say.
Yeah.
And you're like, you just Eminem'd yourself on 8 Mile. You're like, let me just say it for y'all.
I'll say it for you. Exactly.
What do you want to say? I'll say it for you. I thought it was brilliantly executed, though. I thought it was brilliantly executed. Did you play multiple characters?
I played, yeah.
So that was pretty.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. So
that was actually Coming to America.
It's called, it's to get the Coming to America barbershop scene.
Yes.
I play 3 characters. Jeff plays 1, and B. Simone plays 1.
Killed it. Shout out to my girl B. Simone. She killed it. It was done well. Everything you could think of, you brought up.
Yeah.
Was that? Did that take any internal work, or was that like, I'm doing it, I'm just gonna do it? Like, how did you get there?
Yeah, it was. I talked to 2 people to really guide me. I called Jay, and I called Kendrick.
Oh wow, okay.
Kendrick.
And I was like, so I want to do this, and the advice was pretty similar. And it was like, don't do it if you're not willing to be fully you. It was like, nobody wants to hear it if you're not going to tell your truth. I was like, got it.
You told it.
Yeah.
You told it.
Yeah.
And I actually admire the courage.
Yeah.
I admire the courage. I admire the sense to say, everyone's not gonna tell my narrative. I'll tell my own narrative.
Absolutely.
And I'm gonna own it.
I hate ass. But he really did own up to his truth. He really did speak his mind in his album. I've heard a little bit of it, and I definitely heard the song that he is referring to in this interview here. And I'll stop it here, but I will have the full interview linked in the description box below. But I do admire Will Smith for being somebody who speaks his mind and speaks his truth whenever he has sit downs, and he can have these respectful talks and going back and forth. And who better than somebody like Lecrae to discuss these type of matters and have these real deep dives, spirituality and into the discussion of truth and consciousness and love and integrity and authenticity and all these different things. Nobody that I can think of at the moment better than Lecrae to interview somebody like that. And I've done some videos. I think I've done a video or 1 or 2 on Lecrae. Love Lecrae, admire Lecrae. Used to listen to him a lot when I was a Christian and things like that. He's still a very upstanding dude, everything like that. And if he's a Christian and I'm not a Christian, I could still admire him as a person and the platform that he has built for himself. So props to Lecrae. Big props to Lecrae. But let me know how you personally feel concerning the matters of this video. If you want to see more on the basis, actually, I'll just send you to the video I did on Lecrae. If you're a little curious, like, what video about Lecrae? Well, it's right here. All right. So I'll see you in this one over here. I'll see you there.